beings. They are extremely sophisticated pattern matchers. They do not understand your field of study the way human beings do, or the way another human would, or your professor, or your supervisor, or even yourself. They don't understand your field as you do. And I think that's very important. They work with the training data that's being presented to them. So what is it then that an AI can do reasonably well, and what is it that it cannot, AI cannot safely do alone? By the way, whilst I'm here, I have to say to you, those who follow me would know that I do Sunday sessions focusing on AI, and I've spoken about ethical use of AI on my sessions on Sundays. And I want you to know that I use all that information, my training as an academic and working with AI to prepare this. But I asked Claude to take my preparation and put it on a presentation, okay, on PowerPoint slides. So these PowerPoint slides were produced by Claude with my information, okay? That's an out there. Now, what is it that AI can do reasonably well? It can summarize or restate text in different styles or complexity levels. It can do that easily. It can suggest structures for arguments, documents. It can brainstorm research questions, examples, and counterexamples. You can actually brainstorm with it. If you have an idea and you want to brainstorm and you don't have a friend to brainstorm with, or you want to brainstorm with someone without being judged, an AI tool is usually a good idea. It can draft boilerplate text to you, and you can then adapt them, for example, emails, outlines, announcements, and so on. It can do that for you. It can assist you with language editing. When you have done your writing, you can give it to an AI tool and ask it to assist you with editing that language, or giving you feedback on your writing. It can do that, especially if you're not an English speaker and you're writing in English. It can do that for you. It can generate code snippets and support debugging for data analysis. But there are things that it can't do. It can't function the way a human expert does. It cannot make reliable, context-aware judgments about research quality. It can never do that. It cannot provide accurate or citable references. Oftentimes, it fabricates sources that don't exist. It cannot design a sound research without expert human oversight. So you, as the researcher, you have the responsibility to do that. You take the responsibility for truth, for ethics, and even for intellectual originality, because AI cannot be held accountable for the quality of the work that you present or you produce. It cannot, but you are the one who gets held accountable, and that's why you've got to take responsibility. It can never know your context. It can't know your constraints. It can't know your disciplinary standards, even your contextual complexities. So it cannot replace the purposeful intellectual struggle of genuine learning. And so people often say, well, but I can ask it to do anything. Well, of course you can, but you always, and if it gets it right, don't think it will always get it right. And you always have to ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I doing this master's degree? Why am I doing this doctoral degree? Why am I doing this research? That's always important, because if you do that, then you can take AI, your generative AI tool, you can take it as your assistant. Before AI came through, we as professors, we've always had research assistants. They did all these things for us. They did the running, they summarized readings, sometimes they brainstorm research questions with us, they do all sorts of drafts. But we understood that these are assistants. They are not experts, and therefore they cannot make reliable judgments about research quality. We check whatever they do, and we make the final decision. So take any AI tool that you like. It doesn't matter how good it is. You've got to take it as your AI assistant or your research assistant. Okay. Now, Let me focus on purpose and power and the stakes, all right? And this is the framework that I'm using. If you are at a university, you got to understand that universities, there's a purpose to university. But of course, there's also power. And then there's ethics, the context in which we work with. And purpose is about the why. Why do you do what you do? And so we can ask the question about universities. Why do universities exist? Universities exist to educate, to produce research, and to contribute knowledge to society. Degrees, of course, certify that someone has genuinely gained knowledge and skills. A PhD confirms the ability to conduct original research and create new knowledge. So when you have a PhD, we assume that you have that ability. All right. So that's the purpose. That's the purpose. So if you're studying for a PhD, you should be asking yourself that question all the time. Am I able to conduct original research? And am I able to create this new knowledge? So the idea is not just to get the paper, is to do that. And so the why of learning, the why of doing research is always important. That's the purpose. And then power. Power is the what. You see, AI multiplies human ability at extraordinary scales and speed. It allows us to do way more in a very short space of time. It gives researchers, students, and institutions new capabilities. But power, power without purpose produces graduates who are underprepared or unprepared, and it also produces systems that harm rather than help. And that's not what you want. And if you think about it, if a culture of using this power that we have irresponsibly, if it perpetuates, then we are not just harming ourselves or the institution, we are harming the whole enterprise. And then that's where ethics comes in. And ethics is about the how. Ethics are the principles guiding us to act rightly and fairly beyond what the law requires. Ethics build trust, because without them, universities, businesses, and governments lose credibility. And so, whilst power is important, the what, the what is important, the power, and that what, assume that what is an AI tool, whether you use ChatGPT 5 or Perplexity or whatever you use, that's the power. It's got the power to do the work for you. Okay, you also need ethics, because without ethics, universities, businesses, whatever, lose credibility, because power alone is dangerous if it doesn't have ethics. Ethics guide our power. Ethics guide our power. And that's why this is my framework: purpose, power, and ethics. Now, in academia, when you come to AI, there's the good, there's the bad, and then there's the non-negotiable. The good is that there's the good that AI brings to academia, and that's why some people might have heard me talk a lot about the fact that it would be very short-sighted for any university to say we don't want the use of any AI tool at all. You cannot outlaw it in a university. That would be very short-sighted. Okay, so because the good about it is that it brings in innovation, efficiency, and access. Okay, it can also bring enhanced students or encourage enhanced student engagement. It can lead to new forms of assessments and feedback, because the AI, this generative AI, has created such disruption that we as academics have to reimagine assessment. How do you assess? Are there new? Can we assess in new ways? Because the old ways don't work anymore. Do we need more oral exams? Do we need what else do we need to make? Do we need to incorporate AI tools? When we ask you, we give you an assignment. Part of the assignment is for you to engage an AI tool. Okay, so it necessitates these new forms of assessment and feedback, and that's good. It also accelerates research. All right, it can also provide support for non-native language writers, because before you submit your writing, you do the drafting, you write, and then you ask an AI tool to correct, to edit, and therefore your supervisor or your lecturer gets your ideas in your voice, but in cleaner language than in the past when you didn't have it. Okay, it broadens access to learning support therefore. So it's no longer people who have parents and uncles and relatives who are professors who can read and give them feedback who get the advantage. It now opens the playing field. Even children of people who are not educated, as long as they have access to an AI tool, they can do their piece of writing, put it in an AI tool to get feedback, and then, or to get editing, and then only then after. But then there's the bad. The bad is when you pass AI generated work as your original work. The bad is when large language model detection tools are used by universities and they are not reliably accurate. Because some universities use large language models to detect whether you're cheating or not, and then they are not reliable, and then the student ends up suing the university, and then it's a mess. It's an embarrassment of the whole institution. The bad also is in the over-reliance on the AI tool, because it erodes critical thinking, which means we may end up with people with master's and doctoral degrees who cannot think critically, who cannot problem solve, who just have the piece of paper. AI feedback is often superficial, so you don't want to depend on it without engaging it, and that's bad. AI sometimes misinforms, and it can also produce deep fake content. We've seen a lot of deep fake content on the internet, on social media. AI can also produce fabricated references and hallucinated data. It can hallucinate data. It's just like a dishonest human being who can just puke these things out. So there's the bad to AI, and that's why it's important as an academic, a student, and a researcher to pay attention to this. And what's the non-negotiable? The non-negotiable is academic integrity. Always, you've got to uphold that. The non-negotiable is transparency and disclosure. Like I'm saying to you, I prepared this presentation. I presented it before. These are my ideas. But I asked Claude to produce the presentation for me, just to put my information and my voice on the PowerPoint slides. And of course, Claude put it on the slide beautifully. I didn't have to sit and think about the colors. I just gave it the paper and said, put this paper on PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm being transparent with you. The non-negotiable also is the human judgment. You, as the researcher, remain totally responsible for what you present. Therefore, your judgment cannot be replaced. Okay. The non-negotiable also is genuine learning over convenient shortcuts. AI may look like it's giving you just a shortcut, whatever. Make sure that you are learning. If you're not learning, there is no point. Okay. Non-negotiable, it's equity and inclusive design. Sometimes the AI models can be biased. It depends who trained them, who feeds them, where the large language models comes from. And you'll see, I'll talk about that as we go along. And you as the user have to be wise enough to be able to assess. And that's why AI fluency is important. And that's why it's important for you to understand what's the good, what's the bad, and what are these things that you can't just let go. You always have to know that it cannot make the final decision. The non-negotiable is also, you always have to be purposeful and policy guided. Don't just use it without knowing what's the policy of your institution. Okay, if you're a PhD student, master student writing your thesis, I always say to students, have a section in your write-up, in your thesis or something, where you write about how you used AI. Don't pretend you didn't, because we can see you have. Okay, you as a researcher are always accountable for your own work. Now let's see how AI fits in your research workflow. Okay, so in your research workflow, you have the literature review and ideas generation. That's where you start. And what's helpful is that AI can help you brainstorm angles, questions, and gaps. You can use it to brainstorm the questions that you want to ask. So you can use it to request, you can request it for plain language explanations of unfamiliar concepts. You can also use semantic search tools to surface overlooked articles that you would have otherwise overlooked. But you always have to be cautious that, because AI summaries can sometimes miss nuance and misrepresent arguments. And so, and also AI generated reference lists are routinely wrong because it hallucinates and it can give you references that don't exist. Sometimes it's superficial, it gives you superficial and outdated topic suggestions. So you can't go into it and take everything that it says without checking. Remember, whoever is going to be marking your thesis is an expert in the field, so they will be able to spot that. So you want to be able to check that before they tell you that you used AI and it was hallucinating. It can also help you with the planning and structuring your research. And what's helpful there is that it can help you outline a method section and proposal structure. It can list possible methodological approaches and ethical considerations to evaluate critically. But here's a caution: AI cannot know your context, whether it's the context of your university, your country, or your area, or your context of research. It cannot. It cannot know your constraints. It cannot know your disciplinary standards. It cannot know all of that. And therefore, it might write for you as if you already are a postdoc when you are a master's, and someone will be able to tell this is not you. Okay? So suggestions must be adapted or rejected based on your expertise and supervision. Okay, if you're a student, you know what your expertise is. If you're a supervisor, you're in the room, you also know what your expertise is. So you always, anything that it suggests, you've got to evaluate. When it comes to writing and revising, of course, it's useful. It can help you with language polishing, especially when you are not a first language speaker. It can reformat or compress your own text. It's your voice, it's your ideas, and it can reformat it, make it sound proper. And it can suggest alternative phrasings when you're stuck. Because when you're a native language speaker, you're not a native language speaker of the language of your research. Sometimes you get stuck, right? So you can use it. In fact, if you can't write something in English, you can even ask it in your own language to help you. As many language models would understand the many languages. Okay, but here's a caution: asking AI to write your full section or your full chapter, then submitting the chapter or the assignment as your own is not only unethical, but it can embarrass you. So letting AI phrasing dilute your scholarly voice is also a problem. You don't want to lose your voice. Okay, anyone who knows me for a long time will see if I make a presentation and it's not my idea, because there's a style to the way I use language. My scholarly voice is particular. Okay, it's not the same as another person. So if you don't have a scholarly voice, you are busy developing a scholarly voice. If you don't develop that scholarly voice, then, and you just rely on AI, then you are just taking its voice, and you might end up with no voice. And being in an academic space without a voice is as good as not being there altogether. Because who are you? It's not just your name, it's your voice. It's your scholarly voice. And your scholarly voice is in what you research, how you go about it, how you present it, where you present it, and so on and so forth. AI tools, generative AI tools can also help you with data analysis and coding. In the past, before AI, generative AI came in, people used to take their data, hire a statistician, and a statistician would do the scripting and the debug and whatever for you, clean the data for you, and so on. Now you can get an AI tool doing basic statistical scripting and debugging for you. It can also do exploratory visualization. An AI tool can do transcription and initial coding of qualitative data. When I did my PhD, for example, we had to hire people to transcribe our data because we had data on cassettes. And so you don't have time to sit there and just transcribe. We didn't do it ourselves because we had to get busy with other work. And so there were people who, mainly a lot of young people, students or people, graduates who are unemployed, would take the data and then transcribe. They would do transcribe. Now we can just put it in an AI model, and the AI model will produce the transcription. Okay, so it can do all of that for you in terms of the coding you want to do. It can suggest coding. You can argue with it, and so it doesn't. You don't allow it to suggest coding, and then you just go with it as it is. As much as if you ask someone to you doing coding and you're working with someone, you would argue with them. You engage it as well. That's when it becomes useful. Here's a caution: you remain responsible for understanding what the code does. So you can't say, well, this AI model proposed this coding and so I used it. So you've got to know, just like when you have a research assistant or a supervisor or somebody, ultimately it's your responsibility. Automated qualitative coding replaces, it does not replace your interpretive judgment. It doesn't. The interpretive judgment still rests with you. It can suggest, it can guide, but it's for you. I thought I should also include AI in teaching when I talk about supervision as well, because when you're an academic, you do teaching, you do supervision, and so when you're teaching with AI, you can use it to generate draft examples, to generate exercises, or even quiz questions for your students. And of course, once it's generated, you review it, you adapt it for your class, and then only then do you take it to class. You can use it to produce alternative explanations for different levels of prior knowledge. You can use it to design assignments that require students to interrogate AI outputs. Remember, I said you can even ask students to get an AI tool to produce outputs, and then you get them to engage with that output or to compare that output from AI with another output. Okay, you as an academic, you also have to be transparent with students when you're using AI. You tell them, when did you use it and why? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. And in that way, you are modeling responsible ways of using AI rather than pretending, because students will find out that you've used it. Okay, you can also use an AI model to update your course policies, so expectations about AI use are clear and fair, right? So your policies may be outdated and you want to update them, and you can get the help of AI. AI supports learning. It never is a substitute for thinking. If you use it as a substitute for your thinking, then it means you are saying we don't need you. And that's why people complain that it's going to take their jobs. It's because they are using it to substitute them. Now, let's look at supervising in an AI world. That's challenging because as a supervisor, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how much you scare your students, they will use it. They will use AI. So be open about it, put it on the table. Discuss openly with your students where AI may be of assistance to them and where it becomes a misconduct. Like I've been telling you, this is where it helps, this is where it doesn't help. Don't ever say you're not allowed to use it. Be open and say, this is when it's helpful. Caution, this is where it leads you astray. Require students to disclose significant AI use in drafts. Okay, let them, and don't punish them when they disclose. In fact, when they disclose, you teach them how to use it better, because that also supports you as a supervisor. So universities actually should encourage students to use AI. The one thing they should focus on is on how they use it. If you start outlawing it, you are going to have a lot of students who are using it, and they are trying to hide it from you. It shouldn't be hiding. They should know how to disclose. So teach students how to spot also. Teach students how to spot AI-generated errors, especially fabricated references, so that they can use it in their own writing. I mean, we're teaching them to be scholars, so we don't hide it from them. Encourage them to write first. Like as I'm saying to you, you write, you do your writing, and then you can say, Chat, I've done this writing on the mating habits of the tsetse fly. Please give me feedback. You give that writing, and then Chat or whoever you use will give you feedback. Okay, because in that way, when you do that, when you've written first the draft and ask Gemini or whoever to give you feedback, or whatever tool you use, then you keep your own voice primary. Your own voice remains. You don't lose your own voice. And place more weight on oral defenses if you're a supervisor, and process-focused assignments. So academics in the room, the old way of assessing doesn't work. The students will put it on an AI tool. Vary your assessment. Introduce oral assessments. There are varied ways of doing this. If it's for a thesis, oral defenses are great, not as an afterthought after the student has passed. Some universities get their thesis to be marked. Once it's passed, then they say, come and do an oral defense. But you must do it as part of the examining process, because in that way, you get a sense of whether this is their work or not. Help students develop mature judgment, not obsessive policing. You don't introduce obsessive policing of students, because it's unsustainable. Okay, rather help students develop mature judgment, and then they know how to deal with it. Now, let's focus on part 3, ethics, integrity, and the stakes. Now, I have said before, if a degree is earned without genuine learning, through cheating or empty assessments, the degree loses its purpose. The person still holds the power of a qualification, but society cannot rely on their competence, because in fact, they have no confidence. The degree becomes a piece of paper without meaning. And that's power without purpose. It's a piece of paper, but it's got no meaning. Of course, we know that this sickness of pieces of paper with no meaning, this problem has been there, because people have cheated before. They've asked people to write for them or not. And you can tell when someone has got a certificate, but there's no content. Okay? Now, AI is making that possible for people. And if they get through with it, they get found out. Now, for graduates, nurses, engineers, lawyers, teachers who enter workspaces without knowledge, their qualifications suggests cause real harm to real people. So people could die, because we've got nurses and doctors who went through by using AI. For institutions, universities that fail to ensure genuine learning undermine their own academic credibility. Okay, they produce paper qualifications rather than genuine expertise. And of course, cheating is not new. It's been there before. And that's why there are universities in this world that we don't respect. You know where you are in your country, that there are universities that you doubt. And sometimes the students might not be the one who's committed, who's been dishonest. There might be some good students are disadvantaged by the fact that they went to these universities that have lost credibility simply because they've produced some people who have gone through cheating. Now, this is what's at stake. For society, there's a lot at stake as well. When qualifications lose meaning, entire professions suffer. It's not just the individuals who suffer. Public health suffer, infrastructure suffer, Education and justice systems suffer because they all depend on genuinely competent graduates. And that's why you end up with buildings that just fall. And supposedly having been built or designed by engineers, but they fall. Why do bridges fall? Why does a building fall? And nobody says, but which university produced the people who engineered this building? Who was the chief engineer? That's because there's been unethical behavior. So academic integrity is important, not just for the graduates, not just for the institution, but for us as a society as a whole. And that's why responsible use of AI is key. But what are the risks that we can ignore? In academia, AI generated essays are sometimes submitted as original work. That's a risk. We cannot ignore that. Large language model detection tools that are not reliable, or they are not accurate. They create unfair outcomes, and students' academic careers are harmed because a university has used LLM detection tools that are not reliably accurate. Over-reliance on AI models erodes critical thinking and self-regulation. There's a lot of research. I've been reading a lot of research that analyzes brains of people who use AI extensively and how they use it and how it ends up shrinking their brain. And of course, there's many arguments that research that shows the danger of young people who grow up just with using AI. What are the ultimate consequences? So there are risks that we cannot ignore. AI feedback is often superficial, it lacks depth and human judgment, and that's why we need a human expert, and that's you. There's a risk of graduating students who appear competent, but they're not. And there's also a risk of fabricated references and hallucinated citations going undetected. But of course, I'm sure you've seen many publications of audit firms, and even literary scholars who have been punished heavily for using AI in an unethical manner, and then they end up with fabricated or hallucinated citations, and the consequences are huge for the reputation of the audit firm internationally. That it's just a scandal you can't afford to have, both at individual level, in academia, as an institution, and broadly. But in society, deepfakes and AI misinformation mislead entire populations. We've seen deepfakes of presidents. President Macron has been a victim of this, President Cyril Ramaphosa, many presidents, there's been deepfakes of them. And this can be very harmful. Rapid workforce displacement without ethical retraining harms families. And then there's mass data collection without consent, which erodes privacy and freedom, because these AI companies can collect data from what we give them because we're not wise enough, and things can go wrong in that regard. And then AI as a megaphone for lies. AI can act as a megaphone for lies. So that's risky as well. And that's why it is important. I'm gonna put my charger. I see that I'm running out of it. There's a risk of AI perpetuating lies because they have deep fake videos that end up perpetuating things that don't exist. They can fuel political unrest. They can destabilize countries. And then there's concentration of AI power in few companies that affects global South autonomy. That, of course, is a bigger debate about where AI power lies, that it lies mainly in the North, and so the global South is not so well represented. What does it mean in terms of information that AI produces? But let me go back to the ethical landscape, because we're talking about the ethical use of AI. The questions that every academic should ask themselves. So when it comes to data and consent, you've got to ask yourself, as a researcher or as an academic, whose data was used to train these models? Whose data? Under what conditions were authors, artists, and communities asked for consent, or were they compensated? Ask yourself about labor. Who annotates, who moderates, and maintains these systems? Under what working conditions and pay? The AI economy depends on invisible, low-paid labor. Ask yourself about the environment. What is the energy cost of training and running large AI systems, and who bears the costs? Africa contributes to least to AI emissions, but is disproportionately affected. What about power in the global south? How does concentration of AI capability in a few large companies affect knowledge production, access, and autonomy for African institutions? And how do you change that? Open versus proprietary. Can we support open, community-governed AI tools where feasible? Can you? Choices about which tools we use are choices about which futures we build. As you know, the more you use the tool, the more you equip it with intelligence. That's how you train it, and then it gets better. Okay, and then about bias and representation, AI systems amplify existing biases in training data. Question outputs that you must question outputs that marginalize, stereotype, or erase particular communities or knowledge systems. And part 4, what are the principles, the tools, and your voice? And I said your voice is very important. There are 6 principles for the responsible use of AI in research and academia. The first one is transparency. I've spoken about being open about when and how you use it in your research or your teaching. If AI has contributed substantially, indicate that. Secondly, integrity is irreplaceable. Never present AI-generated text, ideas, code, or analysis as your own original intellectual work without substantial transformation or critical engagement of that information. And then 3 is about accuracy and verification. As I said, AI tools have a tendency to hallucinate. So you have to check whether there are errors, whether there are biases, whether there's fabricated references, because otherwise you look like the one who's biased. So always verify, do a fact check and data point and citation. Check that what you are presenting is what's genuine. Privacy and confidentiality. Don't post your confidential data. Don't give it to any AI model, because once you do that, then it will be available. That AI model will use it for other people. So student information and published manuscripts, whilst you are working on them, you don't put them in there. Okay, of course, some AI models do ask you whether what you share, you can share widely, but many of them don't. And 5, it's the principle of human judgment first. Use AI to extend and challenge your thinking, not to replace it. If it replaces it, then this world doesn't need you. You remain responsible for the design. You remain accountable for the interpretation and communication of your work. AI is a tool. It is not your co-author. Just like when you have a research assistant, your research assistant doing the summaries, the whatever, you take it, you write. If they've given you plagiarized work, it is your responsibility. And so you are the one who will be held accountable rather than them. You can't sit and say, nobody's my research assistant. Just like you can't sit and say, oh, well, it's Chisquares or it's Gemini or whatever. It is you who's responsible. And then finally, the 6th one is equity and ethics. You have to be aware that AI systems amplify existing biases. So you just have to check it. If you ask an AI model to give you a picture of someone holding a wine glass, they will always be holding it with the right hand, and it will always be half full. It will not be completely full. So there's certain biases. If you ask it to give you someone writing, it will always be someone writing with the right hand, never a left hand, because that's what's usual. Okay, even if you say, give me a picture of a man writing with the left hand, 9 out of 10 times, it will give you a picture of a man writing with the right hand instead of a left hand. You've got to argue with it and say, no, but this is the right hand. I want the left hand. And it might apologize and end up giving. So even with simple things like that, it gets them wrong. So because it amplifies existing biases. Everyone writes with the right hand. Everyone holds the glass with the right hand. Everyone drinks the wine half, doesn't make it completely full or whatever. So there's particular bias. Even in your research, it will do the same. So what are the practical guidelines, the do's and don'ts? So do use AI to enhance and verify your own thinking, not to replace it. Disclose all AI used in your research, in your writing, your assignments, and critically evaluate all AI-generated outputs before you accept them. Don't just take it for granted. Do the draft first, and then use AI for refinement or challenge. Use AI to access broader literature and spot research gaps. Okay, use it to do that. Don't allow it to just direct you. Okay, now engage with and follow your institution's AI policy. Every university at this point in time has got some AI policy. Of course, in many universities, they are not adequate, but they have some AI policies. And of course, I have theories about this. My view is that the university needs an AI, there needs to be AI governance structure. There's policies that have to be at an institutional level. Some have to be at the faculty level, and some have to be at departmental level, because disciplines are not the same. Now, what are the don'ts? Don't submit AI-generated work as entirely your own original writing. Read it first, critique it first, tweak it, make sure that it's your voice. Don't rely on AI detection tools as definitive tool, as proof of dishonesty. So, and this is for faculties, for universities. Don't just rely on AI detection and say this is definitive, then the student is guilty. And if you're a student, you get accused of AI, whatever, you didn't use it, know that they use an AI detection tool, you can take them up, you can challenge the university, okay? So don't just trust AI-generated references without verifying every citation. Don't just paste confidential data or unpublished work on online AI tools, because you may be compromising yourself or the people that you're working with. Don't allow AI phrasing to replace your distinctive scholarly voice. That voice is important. It is your identity, and it's your scholarly identity. That's what makes you stand out as an academic. You lose it. You lose yourself. You have no identity, and that's not good for your own career and your own advancement. Ignore the structural ethical questions AI raises for your community. Don't ignore them. All right, now, how do you protect your scholarly voice and still use and useful digital tools? So protecting your scholarly voice, first, I've been saying this many times, I'm repetitive, draft first and then consult your AI tool. All right, you do the draft first. It's safe, man. It's better than giving your friend. It's safe. You draft first. So it's got no choice. Even if you give it points in bullet points and you say, here are my ideas, you just write them, you just put them there and you say, okay, help me structure this properly. Okay. Read your work aloud. Does it sound like you? When you read it, is it you? If it doesn't sound like you, then it's not you. So you've got to dump it and make it sound like you. Keep a clear line. Use AI to tidy or restructure. Never let it take over the generation of ideas or the exploratory phase of your thinking. And continue practicing your manual skills. You're a scholar, man. So there should be a time, a week, where you say, now I'm going to pick up a paper. And you may have an AI agent that checks for you the latest publications in your area of study. Like, I have an AI agent that collects for me every month. It gives me a list of papers that are produced in the area of multilingualism and mathematics teaching and learning. I get them. My agent brings them, gives them to me. I read them. I don't do but it's like I have a research assistant who occasionally or monthly checks that, and then I exercise, I practice my manual skills. It has brought me the articles, I read the article. So you want to do that, and that keeps you sharp as a scholar. And useful, on the right, I'm giving you sort of beyond AI, there are many other useful digital tools that you can use. And I'm sure today you'll hear about the other tools that we have in Chisquares. Teachers and institutions have roles and responsibilities when it comes to this. Not just students who have to do this, but teachers need guidance and training on AI. Many universities and schools assume that teachers just need to get it. But my hope is that all universities in their teaching and learning centers, they actually guide teachers on how to use AI as relevant to their discipline. I hope that universities are developing clear policies, institutional policies for AI use in teaching and assessment, and they support academics and teachers to adapt their pedagogy and not just course content, because it's not just about course content, but also pedagogy. Also, in terms of tools to distinguish meaningful AI use from academic shortcuts. So, because they are teachers, they need to understand that. And then an optimistic but critically informed approach to AI in education. Teachers need to have that. If you don't update them or capacitate them, then you are doing a disservice to the students that you're serving. And then what do institutions do? Institutions must develop clear, fair AI use policies across faculties. No AI tool is going to do that for any institution. The institution has to sit and develop those. It has to invest on pedagogical governance, not just AI detection systems. In fact, responsible universities should invest in AI tools that are designed by academics that understand what it means to do research and that protect that. You know, and Chisquares is one of those tools where because it's designed by academics who understand why people do a master's degree, a PhD. You want a tool that does that, not just an AI model that's just developed by business people who don't necessarily have appreciation for why we have research studies and research students. You want the university to recognize that AI changes how institutional governance must function. You want the university or the institution to ensure inclusive design. AI must serve all students equitably. The university must also, institution must create structured spaces for ethical debate and responsible innovation rather than shut voices. And people are scared to speak up because they believe that there's something good about AI, and so you shut them down. You've got to create space for that engagement. Uphold the purpose of the degree to students, so students understand why. From the minute they enter into university to register, they must understand what is the purpose. Why are they learning? Why do you learn? So the purpose must be clear. It's genuine knowledge and genuine skill. And then you can say, this is how you acquire genuine knowledge and genuine skill. Now, in closing, I want you to challenge yourself to draft a short personal manifesto. Half a page, when you have time, just sit down. Your manifesto in terms of AI. Why, how, where, like use these 3 questions. Where does AI belong in your work? In what parts of your research, writing or your teaching or administration, are you comfortable using AI? Where will you deliberately avoid using AI just to protect your thinking, your voice, and your integrity? When will you do that? Just be clear about that. And then, secondly, your red lines. What are your red lines? What forms of AI do you consider clearly unethical in your context, for yourself, for your students, or for your collaborators? How will you respond if you are pressured to cross that line? Like, think about that for yourself, because if you become part of a research team and they use it unethically, if you have your own manifesto, then you can say, no, thank you, but no, thank you. In fact, any research team, a research group that starts to work together must have this. Every research center, they must have this conversation, say, what is our manifesto? And then individuals must have their own manifesto. Like every executive team must have their own manifesto about the use of AI. And finally, your tool set for the next year. Which 3 to 5 digital tools, AI or not, will you rely on most? And for what specific purpose? How will you ensure that you understand their limitations and data practice? Like, I mean, for me, there are people who've got every tool under the sun. I've got specific Gen AI tools that I use for specific reasons. I know this one I use for this one I use for this one I don't use for that because I know it's not its space. So develop your own manifesto. I know for sure when will I not use it. And so from here on, what we need is intentional, human-centered approaches to AI in education, where innovation is guided not just by what is possible, but what is educationally and ethically valuable. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions. I'm going to pause here, Lungile. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof.
All right.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I see a lot of comments. People are clapping. They loved your presentation. See a lot of positive comments and a lot of questions as well. Prof, I'm thinking because of time, can I let Prof. Agaku speak and then questions all at once at the end of the session?
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Just stay on. We are now entering our second part of the presentation of the session. Dr. Agaku, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. I think you can just go ahead.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And that was a very fantastic presentation. And so it segues very naturally into what I will present next. And so, since we're talking about the role of AI in research, we need to first of all step back and understand what we mean by research. Research means a systematic inquiry. It means to search over and over again. That's why we call it research. We could have easily called it search, but the re in search is because it's iterative. And this ties back to what the previous speaker said, because then that implies a level of human cognition and human involvement so that it's repeated over and over with the goal of creating reproducible knowledge. And the goal is to identify and isolate the truth. That's the reason why we do research. And this is very important because the whole essence of research is how do we separate truth from chance and bias? And as we've listed, as we've heard, AI could be a source of bias. And so it becomes very important that when doing research, we're very careful to isolate and separate biases that may be inherent from AI itself or the tools that we use. As I say in epidemiology, the goal is to separate the whole truth, not produce the whole truth. So we don't want truth with holes. And so that's why we want to be very diligent. Now, holes can appear at any point in the research process, from the design of our studies to the implementation, to analysis and the reporting. Of course, AI has a role to play in any of these phases, but then there has to be a framework which we can use to determine when AI is appropriate and when it is not. Now, I'm going to focus on my presentation mostly from an applied perspective in terms of when we design tools or software for research, what are some of those ethical frameworks that we'll keep in mind? So the role of AI in this context is like a glue. So we use AI to put together processes so that it appears seamless. So on the Chisquares platform, for example, automations are achieved by a combination of two things. We bring in AI and we bring in rules-based automation. So the difference between these two is that with a software framework or rules-based algorithm, I, the engineer, will have set up rules and said, if this happens, then execute that. So that means that the outcome is always deterministic. The same thing always happens because the rules are fixed. But with AI, AI makes the rules and evaluates by itself in real time. And so that's why the result of AI can be, can vary from run to run. And therein lies the problem. We don't want an analysis or result where run number 1 will get 10.8 as a result, run number 2 will get 12.1. That is no longer consistency in research. It means that research is no longer reproducible. And that's the problem. And so on the Chisquares platform, for example, all things that we classify as high-risk tasks do not involve AI. So that means anything that is data-facing, whether it's computation, analysis, transformation, any kind of data, that includes your references, which are also data. Like we've heard from a previous speaker, AI can hallucinate, can make up references. And so we obviously don't want to involve AI in that kind of process on the platform. The same thing applies with any kind of task that takes a data set and manipulates the data set to generate insights. For those things, we use rules-based algorithm, which is exactly what you use in any software you analyze, whether it's Python or R. Those all follow rules-based algorithms. And so the exact same thing is replicated. And so this boils down to understanding what we term the AI task hierarchy. In other words, let's allow AI to do the things that it can do very well, but let's not otherwise allow AI to do things that it cannot do very well. So AI is very good at saying, take this small text and make it big, take this big text and make it small. But for tasks that require high level of precision, where we need to be 100% accurate 100% of the time, for such tasks, we do not involve AI at all. Now, there's still another problem. Of course, we want humans to be involved in the high precision tasks, but it is also common knowledge that research is hard, or at least research is perceived to be hard. And especially when it comes to things like analysis of complex survey data sets, that is not a skill that every researcher has. And so it's not very uncommon that a lot of papers are published and have to either be retracted or at least an erratum issued for them, not because of any dishonesty on the part of the authors, but because of a gap in knowledge. Not everybody has the expertise or the knowledge to take a large complex survey data set and apply weights and analyze it, right? It's a very niche skill. So for us, the problem is if we cannot use AI for such high precision tasks, how then do we create automations with rules that empower researchers to do things in an easy but accurate manner? So that's the problem we're trying to solve on the platform. In other words, how do we make the research process seamless? The word seamlessness is one of my favorite words in the dictionary because I think it's best contrasted by the difference between a baseball and a table tennis egg. If you look at a table tennis egg, there's no place where the sutures appear to meet. The whole process is smooth. And so how do we make research seamless? Research sometimes can appear overwhelming because it's fragmented. You collect data, then you analyze the data. Well, you don't know how to do the analysis. You have to go and find somebody who will do it. That fragmentation is what makes research appear hard. And so that's one of the problems we've tried to solve in the platform. And so the Chisquares platform is a one-stop shop where all tasks related to the research process, whether it's data collection, analysis, visualization of data, writing of manuscripts, are all done on the platform. It's not an AI platform, but we use AI judiciously at points to make the process seamless. And we'll go through a demo to see how that works. At what points, based on our risk-based framework, do we allow AI to be used? And at what points do we not allow AI to be used? And so that's what we're going to do now. How do we utilize AI in a way that is meaningful? And so I'm going to head over now and walk through a demo. And I would like to use a paper that we recently published in the New England Journal of Medicine. That was a couple of weeks ago that has received quite a lot of press coverage. So this paper, we did the entire analysis and writing on the Chisquares platform. Like it says here, all analyses were weighted to account for the complex survey design and conducted using the Chisquares research platform. All right, so how does the Chisquares platform then incorporate AI in a way that is meaningful yet ethical? So that's what we're going to go through now. So I have my account logged in. I'm going to just upload the data set and walk you through how the tasks on the platform are well compartmentalized into things that involve AI and those that cannot involve AI because of our risk-based framework. So in this case, I want to analyze data. So again, one of the problems we're trying to solve is how do we empower people who otherwise may not be able to analyze data sets to analyze it themselves. We want to really address this problem where someone takes that data set and goes and hands it over to somebody else to analyze for them. Because it's your research. Ideally, you should be able to interrogate the data yourself and generate the insights yourself. Because the same argument applied to AI can also perhaps be applied to the context where you take your data set and hand it over to somebody else who does all the analysis and writes all the results, and you don't really have the context for what happened. It's not a very dissimilar argument. So what we're trying to do is really build empowerment for people where they can take whatever data set themselves and analyze it. So let's go through a quick demo of the process. So I have a data set to analyze. Let's start from scratch, and I can start a new project here where I give my data set a project, a title, for example, NHIS analysis. You can provide a description if you want, otherwise you proceed. And then we're going to go through the process of how we then upload the data set. So now we want to upload the data set we used for the analysis of this report. In this case, we used data from a large national survey, the National Health Interview Survey. Now, whenever you use large surveys like this, for most cases, almost 99% of cases, whenever you see the word national in front of a survey, you have to be aware that such analysis might require weight. Now, when you fail to account for the weight, your analysis may be invalid. And that's exactly what I showed you earlier in that report, this report from the authors. They said, following the publication of our article, we noticed we had not considered sampling weight of complex survey design. They used data from let's see, which survey was this? Prevalence of self-reported tuberculosis, demographic and health survey. This is what they use, the India demographic and health surveys. Of course, DHS is also a large complex survey, which you must account for the complex survey weight. And so let's see how that happens on the platform. So I will upload my data set. There are 3 ways you can upload your data set on the platform. You can choose a data set that is on your computer. You can import from your survey. The platform also allows you to conduct surveys. So if you have a survey running, you can import data from that. In this case, I'm trying to import from a data set that is on my computer. So I click on that and I simply select data set that I want to import, and then I import it. So again, like we said, established earlier, anything that involves data is distinct from AI. AI cannot be used for such processes on the platform. So we'll see how that process works on platform. So when you import the data set, the platform reads data for issues that may be present in your data set, like missing values and issues with naming and issues with the validity of the values. And once it's done, you have your data set here. Here you have the variable name, you have the variable type, which is detected by the platform. Yes, Lungile, your hand is up.
Yes, Dr. Gako, I just wanted to ask you to please maybe introduce the platform for those who are joining us for the first time. How do you access it and so forth? Thank you.
Okay, sure. So the Chisquares platform is a web-based platform. So in other words, it's like accessing LinkedIn or any other web app. You have to go to a website and sign in. So here the website is www.chisquares.com. So if you don't have an account, you have to sign up. If you have an account, you log in. So once you log in, then you'll be able to access these features. Here you have tools for data collection where you can conduct surveys, you can do sampling, you can calculate the sample size. You have a tool like Collaborate where you write, as the name implies. Then you have data analysis. There are also tools for AI course, we're talking about AI. There's an AI toolkit here that allows you to do things like write a research proposal, write a journal cover letter, create a research proposal, a research question. So in other words, to explore. Again, AI is very great for things like that, exploring ideas. And so you can do all of those things on the platform. But for the sake of this short demo, I'm just focusing on the data analysis and showing how does AI come into play? At what point during the life cycle of this process do we inject AI, and where can AI not be used to ensure that our research work is indeed ethical, and very importantly, accurate. Accuracy is very important because research builds on research. We don't want other research to build on a lie. So here I have my data set. Of course, the first thing you want to do when you import the data set is to inspect the data. So here you have the name of the data set. You have the number of columns. Columns are the variables in your data set. So things like age and sex and race, those are variables. And so you have the number here, rows here refer to the number of people. So here we have 32,629 individuals in this wave of data set. And again, the platform will always show you the mode of analysis clearly, so that you will not say, oh, geez, I was supposed to analyze data as weighted analysis, but I forgot. So here you have analysis mode. So now I know that my analysis are unweighted. That's very important because if I'm using a large data set like Enhance or demographic and health surveys, I know that I have to account for the weights. It is better not to publish at all than to publish a paper and then have to retract it later because you did not know that you were supposed to account for weights, or you did not know that so-and-so was supposed to be done. And the good thing is that the Chisquares platform makes it very, very easy for you to do all of those things. In the good old days, using complex surveys was something that very few people could do. But the whole point is, how do we democratize access to such knowledge? And so here, if I want to make sure that my data is set to weighted mode, I'll simply click this here and select the weight. You have to read the data documentation to know what the weight variable is. In this case, I already know it because I've read the documentation and I know that this is the weight variable. You select the PSU, which is this, and then you select the stratum variable, which is this. And now that's all you have to do to set your data to and analyze the data in weighted mode. Now, as you can see, the analyses are weighted. If all you're interested in is just a quick descriptive summary of the data, you can click here to get the descriptive statistics from the data. The platform will take the data and in a second, analyze all of the reports for you and give you the visualization of each of the variables. Again, this is not AI. Why? Because this is something that involves data. And so we cannot use AI for things that are data facing because of the risk of error. If you want to recode your variables, you can also do so. Recoding means we want to change the structure of a variable. Maybe it's a continuous variable like this, and we want to make it categorical. To do that, you simply select here and click on Recode. So for example, this variable, I may want to slice it at maybe at 90. So I click anywhere there, I select the place I want to slice, and I confirm. And the platform will then slice it so that I have now categorical data, 2 categories. I can choose to edit the label and call this whatever I want to name it, group A and group B. So everything on the platform is done in 2 modes. There is the visual mode. Visual mode, as the name implies, is visual. You have to see what you're doing. It makes data come alive. So now you don't have to write some complex code to slice or to categorize a variable like this. You just slice, enter the number, and that's it. You can also see the number of missing values. So here, for example, this tells me that this variable has 29,364 missing values. Well, if you're analyzing data on any software, those missing data are there. The only difference is that now you are visually aware of them. So everything on the platform is done that way, such that you have a visual method of doing everything. But for people who like to suffer, we also provide them with a classic method, which is less intuitive, but which might align with what they perhaps are used to. The same thing applies to categorical variables. So for example, if I have a categorical variable like trade, and I want to recode it, the platform allows you to simply drag and drop. So here I can drag and drop categories, and that's how you recode. I can, if I want to collapse these three together, I can simply select the three and merge them together. Again, this is not AI because this is a direct data-facing task that, we need to make sure it's accurate, 100% accurate, 100% of the time. It has to be deterministic. Every time I come and do a record, I have to get the exact same thing. And the only way we can achieve that is with rules-based algorithms. Now, let's go back to our paper. This report. How do we then generate this kind of report? Well, you cannot remove the human being from a process. So the first thing when you're writing a paper like this is to, first of all, understand the research. Like we heard from the last speaker, understand the topic. Why are you writing this topic? Why are you doing this investigation? There has to be a purpose to which you are doing that work. And that is not something that AI can do for you. AI can do a lot of things, but it cannot think for you. It cannot make those kinds of decisions for you. So in this case, I have identified my own topic. I have identified that I want to look at tobacco product use among adults. I've chosen to look at these years. Why? Because I wanted to look at those years because there was a gap in those years. Those are things that a human, you, the researcher, must do, right? That's the whole point of the research process. The platform, what it does is to remove those mechanical tasks and make the process more seamless. And so let's now see. In this case, let's say I want to generate a table like this. Let me pull up a PDF so it's easier to look at this. So let's say I want to generate some of the tables here. Let's say table 1. This is weighted analysis. I want to look at prevalence of tobacco use, this tobacco product, by all of its characteristics. How do I generate that? So let's go back to the platform. Here, I'll simply come to estimates because I want to generate estimates, and I want to calculate prevalence estimates, and I'll select my variables, the variables I'm interested in. So variables like current cigarette smoking and electronic cigarettes and cigars and smokeless tobacco. These are all the outcomes that I had on that page, right? This product. Those are your outcomes. I select them accordingly. When I'm done, I click on Done Selecting. Then I select my stratification variables. Stratification in epidemiology simply means to break something into smaller units. So for example, here, I'm stratifying my analysis by sex and age and race and all of those things. That's what we mean by stratified analysis. So here, I'll select my stratification variables like the occupation, like disability, like BMI, sex, sexual orientation, poverty index ratio, marital level, and this and that. And again, done selecting. Now, next, I can choose to compute weighted counts by selecting this. I'm going to explain to you in a minute what that means. And then I can click on estimate. It's as simple as that. Now let's see what weighted count means. When we write reports like this, sometimes you see numbers like this. Use of other tobacco products, including cigars and e-cigarettes, remain unchanged, and 18.8% of adults, which is 47.7 million, used at least one product. The question is, how do we get numbers like this? How do we generate a number like 47.7 million? Well, the wrong way of generating it is to take this number, 18.8, and go and multiply by the census projection or census number of the total adult population. That is the wrong approach because you are assuming that the sampling frame for this survey is all US adults, which is not the case. And so the proper way to do it is to use the weighted analysis like we did. And so once we have done that, the analysis runs and we get our results like this. The analysis are structured. For every analysis done on the platform, you have a figure which is generated for you. You also have text. the platform writes out the results for you. Again, none of this involves AI, because it involves the analysis of data, it involves the synthesis of evidence, and so it is non-AI facing. Then you also have metadata. Now, if I want to write a report, now I can choose to generate my manuscript by transferring my analysis to my document. So you come to actions here and select push results. So I can click on push results, and now I can create a manuscript, add a title to it like tobacco product use among US adults during 2022, 23 to 2024. I can also generate aims. Now I'm giving a prompt to generate aims with AI. Now, why do I have AI here now? Because AI, in this case, generation of aims in this context is a low-risk task. So if I ask AI to generate aims, well, I can edit the aims it has generated for me. I can discard it altogether. But that's the framework the platform uses. AI use is restricted to tasks that are deemed to be low risk. In other words, tasks that are non-data facing. So here, I can select some of the aims that AI has generated. I can edit them. And again, here's another framework for AI use, another principle. Wherever AI is used, there has to be a mechanism for the human in the loop to edit the work that AI has generated. So it can't just be AI generate something and that's it. So I can edit whatever AI has generated, and I can create my document. And now I can push my content to that manuscript I have just created now. So again, so far in all of this process, the only time I used AI was to generate an aim, which I could have done myself. The platform also gives you the option to disable all AI should you not want to use AI. So it's not as if it's a requirement that you have to use AI. You have the option to use AI or not to use AI. So now that we've pushed the content, let's go and view the document and see how that plays out. So in the document or the manuscript, there's also opportunity for you to use AI or not, depending on what your university standards are, what your own personal preferences are, and so on and so forth. So here, for example, the platform has taken the content and pushed it to the manuscript. The parts that are supposed to go into the methods have come to the methods. The parts that are supposed to go to the results have moved to the results. Again, this is not AI. This is just rules-based automation. Now, let's come to specific parts of the manuscript, like the methods. How do we generate them? You have this button here that says generate content. And here we also try to employ ethical use of AI here. So when you generate content, for example, the idea here is to make sure that methods or the other sections of the manuscript are complete. So you are given a prompt to supply information, which is then used to complete that section. So for example, the methods. Our priority is to make sure that the method is complete, that every single element that is important from an epidemiologic perspective is there. So however you do it is up to you, whether you want to write manually, whether you want to use an assistance like that's a personal decision. But if you wanted to use a tool like this, here we ask you pointed questions, because the idea is it's easy for anyone to fill a form. So what was study design? This was a cross-sectional study. AI cannot know these things by itself. You have to tell what the design was. What ages were eligible? This was among adults aged 18 years or older. Next question. What was the study setting? This was a household-based survey. Next, how were participants selected? This was a stratified sampling technique. Next, how were data collected? This was face-to-face interviews. Next, what was the location of participants? This was in the United States. Next, when did that collection occur? This was 2023. So you provide the information and you generate methods. AI then takes that information you've generated or you provided and just writes a paragraph for you, but you are responsible for supplying that information. That's the same principle the platform uses for all other sections of manuscript, like the introduction and the discussion. The human supplies the content, and the AI then simply takes that content and polishes it accordingly. The same thing applies to the references. I'm going to stop there after so we can take questions. For citations, again, citations are data, refer to data, that actual data. So again, according to our risk-based framework, we cannot use AI for reference management because AI can hallucinate things. So when you come here, the platform has already pulled references for you. But this is not from some AI text. This is from linkage to data sources like PubMed and Web of Science and so on and so forth. And that's why for every reference that is developed, you have this button to read from source. So if I click on read from source, it's going to take me to the actual manuscript. So you have that linkage. Every single bibliography or reference on the platform links directly to the single source of truth so that you can read it. So the whole idea here is to make it easy for you, to make it accessible. So should I want to cite this work, all I do is click on cite, and the platform simply cites it there in line and also adds it to my reference section at the end of the day. So I'm going to stop there and see if folks have questions so that we make sure that questions that people have are well answered.
Thank you, Prof, for that brief presentation. Okay, I see someone's already raising their hands. So I will start with questions from the first session, and then I will move to Prof. Fadaku. So, and if you posted your questions and we missed them, please feel free to repost them on the chat. We will read them out. Anyway. Sorry, I'm just scrolling. All right, so Prof. Peking, are you still here?
I am here.
Okay, so this you. When reviewing original work with AI, how does one protect their original content from being used by others who are researching the same topic?
As I said, I mean, from my experience with, did I switch on the eye? Okay. Some AI models ask you whether you want your data to be shared publicly. Some allow you not to allow it. Okay, but once you put your data on an AI model, you open it up for, or you're right, you open it up for use for others. But of course, your AI tool also gets to know you. I mean, you are developing a relationship. So you've got to manage it in a way that it gets to know you. It will remind you what you gave it as your piece of writing last week. You can even say, last week I asked you to do this. I gave you my piece of writing and I asked you to review it. Now I have additional, I've expanded the chapter. Here's the new text. But you can't really protect everything that you put on the AI model. But maybe Prof can talk about how the Chisquares platform works in that regard. Because it might be useful.
Yeah, thank you very much. So on the platform, everything you do on the platform is in your own space. So we don't know what you're doing. It's your work is protected to you and you alone. Of course, there's a risk when you invite collaborators because the platform is a collaborative platform. And so the way we manage that risk also is to allow you to assign privileges to individuals based on the role they're supposed to play. So you can say, you, this individual, you can do this, but not that. You can analyze, have access to the manuscript, but not the data, and so on and so forth. And so, but that way, there's a semblance of control in your hands. The data are encrypted because there's always a concern with web-based platform and risk of people hacking in and stealing your work. So the platform is data encrypted at rest, in motion, and in use. So that means that even if someone was to hack into your system, the data will look like gibberish without the right keys to unlock the data. So those are just some basic fundamental protections that meet industry standards, which are provided on the platform.
But Prof, you'd probably agree with me that I think a platform that is designed for academic purposes like Chisquares is more aware of these concerns and therefore can make sure that people's writing and their data is much more protected. So, and it's for that reason that I would say that universities and actually academics and researchers should actually prioritize using this for their academic writing and the research writing rather than other AI models.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll move to the next question. Prof, this is for you, Prof. Peking again. You seem to say the human-first approach is more ethical when compared to AI-first approach. Why?
Because it's your work. So you must be the one who gives the first take on the idea, on the writer. That's number one. Number two is that's also the best way to protect your voice. And number three, it's also a way to teach your AI model, to train your AI model in your way of being, of writing, so that it gets to know your voice as well. So that's indispensable. It's for ethical purposes, but it's also for your scholarly identity. It's hugely important. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, Prof. So I'll give this one to Dr. Agaku. In generating manuscripts from the Chisquares platform, do I need to upload data before generating the manuscript? Also, are the data Prof talked about accessible to all platform users?
It depends on the kind of work you're doing. Not all manuscripts are driven by analysis of data. Your manuscript could just be an expert opinion. There are many things that don't involve analyzing data. So that is a question that you would have to answer yourself. Now, should your manuscript involve analysis of data? Yes, then you have to bring your data set. However, one of the things we've also done on the platform is to bring together most of the publicly available data sets available in the public domain and make it accessible to researchers. And so if you're trying to, for example, analyze the demographic health surveys or national youth tobacco surveys, all of those data sets are already accessible on the platform. But essentially, the responsibility to determine what kind of data sets you're analyzing, what kind of variables you're analyzing, those are primarily the work of the researcher. I mean, and that's the whole essence of research. You have to know what you want to do first. And so, but should you decide that you want to analyze the data set, then if it's on the platform, great. If it's not on the platform, then you will have to figure out where to collect the data or how to access it.
Thank you. Thanks. So back to you, Prof. Peking. I'm glad you said you don't mind being called Prof. Peking. That's how I've always known you. So it's difficult now to have to change it to Doctor. Okay, so what are the implications for institutions that do not have clear AI policies?
Sure. Wow, then unethical use will be widely spread, I think. And then they might have to, it will make it even more difficult for the university to hold the students or academics accountable if they use AI unethically, if you don't have AI governance policies. So It's very dangerous if you don't, because it puts you as a university on a back foot. You can't hold people accountable, and it makes the use of AI go wild, and you may have a proliferation of unethical use of AI. So I think the sooner the university, and policy is not just, it's not to say it's prohibited. That's not policy, that's irresponsibility, actually.
Thank you very much. And this is also from your presentation. It's quite a long one. If an architect utilizes generative AI, you saw
I saw
great.
that. I saw
Okay.
that. I thought that person is playing games, you know, because he wants me to apportion blame, you know, to the tool, to the company that designed the tool, or to the person who used it and then published the work. And for me, from where I'm sitting, I think the person who used and published and never acknowledged is actually the culprit. That's not to say you can't trace to the company, but I think that because the responsibility is with you on how you use it, you know. And we've seen, I mean, Deloitte has been in the media for using AI unethically. And in fact, the company whose AI tool they use, it's irrelevant. The people who are held accountable, it's the company that used, and they were held accountable twice within a 6-month period, and it was all over international media. So I mean, yeah, it's the person who uses, because you have to be ethical. The fact that it's there and it gives you hallucinated information doesn't exonerate you from your responsibility to evaluate whatever the tool gives you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll let you both comment on this one. It wasn't really a question. I don't know if you also read this one where someone said, I came across a post some time ago on LinkedIn, and it got me concerned about the disclosure policies and transparent non-negotiables from some of these journals. Someone who had a paper rejected, it's also a very long post that was shared. So someone got their paper rejected, and the reason was that because this person had actually disclosed the use of AI. So now they're saying this reveals a fundamental contradiction in academic publishing. We're told to be transparent about AI use, then we're rejected for being transparent. The result? Researchers will start hiding AI assistance instead of disclosing it. The exact opposite of what COPE and MDPI, this was the journal, claimed to want. The question shouldn't be, was AI used? It should be, is the science sound? Transparency should be rewarded, not punished. Yeah, so I just wanted to hear your thoughts, both, and Prof. Gaku, so I'll start with you. Okay.
You want to start with me, Lungi, or you start with Prof?
Yes, please, with you.
Okay, so I'm all for transparency, for disclosure. I mean, the person is not telling us how they disclosed and how they used it. I think it's just like citation, someone if you use someone's work and you don't say, and the issue is how did you use it? So and of course I saw another question, and maybe as I answered this, I answered the other one too, where the person was saying, how do you cite it? Okay, so there are style guides that have a guide, guidance, specific rules on how you cite. But I prefer that you always indicate the AI tool name, like I used X and a version this, if there's a version, and then you provide the dates when you generated the content, and then you indicate the full prompt that you asked it. I think it's fair to say that, because we don't know what prompt you used. And because if you put the prompt, then then because I don't know whether this person had manufactured data, I just asked Chat or whoever to bring out data that didn't exist, or do the analysis or do the writing from scratch. I don't know. So when I review papers, I actually honor the people who out themselves that they have used AI, and they indicate how. In some cases, you know, people say you should treat AI as a personal communication. You don't have to include a reference entry or so on. So you just say, you know, example, OpenAI 2023, you know, and so on and so forth. But I would put, and I think in this early age of AI, I always find it fascinating how people used it, and it tells me more about the scholarly depth of the author if they say how they used it than if they pretend they haven't used it and I find out that they've used it. I think it's more problematic that you are found out that you used it than if you indicate that you've used it and how and why. You know, so papers don't just get rejected for having used AI. There's many reasons why a paper gets rejected. And I have to say in this question, I don't have the whole story. I would like to know the whole story, because how do I know that there was something else except the use of AI? Did the reviewer, did the editor say, this is the reason why we are rejecting, because you used AI, or because how you used AI, or what did they say the reason is? Because there's always a reason why a paper gets rejected. Thanks, Lungi.
Oh, thanks very much, Prof. Dr. Gaku?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think Prof has said it very eloquently. And for me, as I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Tobacco-Induced Diseases, and if I cannot speak for all other journal editors, because there's no single consensus in the scientific community, just as there is no consensus among institutions on how AI can be used. And sure, I concede that journals might say one thing and do another, but as an editor, I will not take offense at I mean, our journal policy says, yeah, if you use AI, don't treat it like a dirty little secret that you feel a need to hide. Disclose it the same way you disclose that you used so and so tool for data analysis. Nobody feels awkward saying that I used X, Y, and Z for data analysis. So why should you suddenly feel awkward about saying you use a tool? It's a tool. So I think but I think it's going to take a while. We also have to acknowledge that we're in the very early phases of this innovation, and it's just natural that there will be some pushback and some resistance, especially from people who feel that this is the way things are supposed to be done. So maybe there's also an element that we collectively need to have, because sometimes the scientific norms move at a glacial speed, and and hope that things change. But again, education is required, because again, sometimes some of these policies are made on the basis of ignorance or just a knee-jerk reaction. So if we're educators, then, or if we're decision makers, then I think the ask is helpful to have a framework or a principle-based decision making. For example, if you say AI is not allowed in this area, why? There has to be some framework that underpin why you have said it's not just a blanket because we don't like it. That is no longer common sense policy making, right? So thinking through frameworks and principles and policies, I think, will help all of us, in that regard.
Thank you so much for that. Question. This one was for you, Prof. Picking. After primary write-up and presenting it to AI to refine it, will you not still be flagged for AI use?
I haven't used the AI detection tools, so I don't know what they produce, how they detect. My sense is that it wouldn't have generated the content. It should have reworked your content. And so it wouldn't. I don't think it would come out as not your original work, because it will. I mean, you tell it to respect your voice, and this is the content, and it does the rework respecting your voice. So which means you're saying, I want it to sound like me. This is my ideas, but I want you to clean it up. I don't think it would. It would be interesting to hear what Prof thinks.
Yeah, I think that I also like you. I'm not. I actually actively discourage the use of search detection tools because, for one, they've not been validated. Number two, when you say X percentage of AI use, what does that really mean? It's a useless metric. Do you mean it has no inherent meaning, and it begs the question of, oh, what percentage of AI is allowed? Which is a real trivial question, because we have it's an XY problem where instead of focusing on X, we're now focusing on Y. And after a while, we're asking ourselves, why are we focusing on Y instead of focusing on X? And so I think it lends itself to a situation where we then focus on the framing of the issues rather than the issues themselves. So the goal of research, let us produce work that meets a gap in research, that moves the field forward. Now, if we happen to use a tool, whatever tool we use, so be it. And so we declare it. And we, this obsession about, oh, this AI detection. How do I use AI and still make it sound as if I did not use AI? It's almost like laughable. Like if you don't want to use AI, don't not use it. But the idea of, let me use AI, but I want to project that I did not use it. I think it then becomes a trivial point at that point.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The next question was Prof. Fagaku. Did I hear you correctly from your presentation that the analysis of DHIS2 data should also be weighted?
Yes, if you're analyzing data and data that has weights, demographic and health survey, most national surveys, especially those in the public domain, are designed such that you have to use weights. And not to go into a stats class, the whole idea of weights is because when we sample for large national surveys, we tend to oversample small groups. So oversampling means that we have injected selection bias into our study intentionally. The way we correct that problem is to weight the data at the end. And that corrects that problem we created to ensure we had enough people. So when you fail to weight the data, that means then that you have selection bias in your study, your results are not valid. And so that is a problem. And so that is why you have to make sure you use the right tools. And AI does not do very well with analysis of weighted data. AI is not designed to be an analytical tool, right? So if you're using a large national survey that requires weights and you're using a tool like ChatGPT, I can guarantee you that you are almost always going to be wrong, because it might get the point estimate correctly, but it will calculate the standard errors wrongly because it fails to account for the PSUs and the strata. So solution is simple. Simply use a tool that has been designed for that specific purpose. Don't ask AI to do what AI has not been designed to do.
Thank you very much. And okay, now this is for everyone here, the participants. We have been posting the attendance link. So it's basically a link. If you're joining us for the first time, it's a link. It will direct you to a survey similar to one that you used when registering. So we just need your name, your surname, your email address, so we can be able to send your certificates of attendance. So please look out for that on the chat box. There's a link being posted, and please make sure that you complete it if you want to receive a certificate. I'll take Henry's question. Henry Uzoma. You may unmute. You may unmute yourself.
Okay. Good evening from here in Nigeria. I'm Dr. Henry Uzoma from Federal University of Technology, Owerri. I am very grateful to our presenters. In fact, you've opened my eyes to a lot of things I haven't known before now. I have some questions. The first one is with respect to issues of plagiarism check. This some publishers requiring certain percentage of a similarity index before they can accept your manuscript. I would like to know, when you post your manuscript on any AI platform, won't tools like Turnitin see the content and possibly increase the similarity index? That's the first question. And the second one is working on the Chi-Square platform. Assuming you have a picture, let's say a histopathological picture that you have made, or let's say a micrograph, a microscope, transmission electron microscope micrograph that you want to include into your manuscript. Is there any way that can be done? Because when a prof was demonstrating that, I didn't see anywhere you can add your own picture apart from the one generated from your data. And then the last one, my last question there is, assuming there's a particular reference that you want to cite in your manuscript, does the platform have a kind of provision that will enable you to cite that special reference, apart from the ones you detected by yourself? Thanks a lot.
Okay, Prof, do you want to take the first question on Turnitin?
You know, I didn't think the use of Turnitin is as popular now as it used to be. And it was always controversial because in the same way, it gave a percentage, and universities have policies about the fact that you can't go beyond this percentage or that percentage. And there was always debates about if the student, because the student could also put their work through Turnitin before they submit to check what they would get. And if you did that, if you submit, then Turnitin already has it. And then there was always a debate about, will it then see that as work that's written? I don't know how it works right now. I mean, I think right now there are more sophisticated ways. I mean, students, there's even the software that works to make sure that Turnitin can't even detect. So I would be surprised if there's still any university that still use, but I don't think it would necessarily take the percentage up because plagiarism is a different problem from dishonesty through use of generative AI. Plagiarism is much sort of easier, whereas generative AI, because it mimics us, it mimics a human being, it doesn't necessarily pop up as plagiarism, to pop up as something else. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess my short answer is I don't know if it will do that. I doubt that Turnitin would spot that. There are other detection tools for use of Gen AI, not just Turnitin. As much as there are tools to hide the use of Gen AI that students use these days. And that's why in the US in particular, there are so many court cases where students are contesting, where universities take them to task. Prof.
Yeah, thanks. And also just to clarify that, no, it's very hard for any tool to actually detect plagiarism. What it can detect is similarity between your work and whatever body of work that exists out there. And in general, I think I also like to point out that I think the collective discussion around research has been more geared towards tools nowadays. Tools for this and tools for that. And I think in the midst of all of that, we've almost forgotten about the art of research, the craft of research. And it's just this obsession with these tools to hide that tool, and there's another tool to hide what that tool is doing. So I think, returning back to the basics is definitely very welcome. Now,
Absolutely.
Now, regarding the questions about the insertion of images, yes, you can insert images. So if you come here, you see You can insert the link, you can insert the table. If you have a table, for example, an external table, maybe a spreadsheet you had, you can generate a table on the platform, you can upload it, you can copy and paste the table, and the platform will automatically reformat the table. The same thing applies to images. You have here, you can upload an image, a figure that you have. And if you have an Excel spreadsheet with many, many tabs, with many, many images in each tab, you don't have to now start saving each image and then importing it. The platform can read directly from such files as well. Now, regarding references, you can also choose to import your own references. So apart from PubMed and DOI and other sources, you have manual references and import. The platform can accept references from any other database. So if you have your reference in EndNote, you can export those and import them into the platform such that they will be in your citation. They will now appear in your citation library, and then you can cite them. Over.
Thank you. Bioma Amos, can unmute yourself. So this is our last question.
Yes, good evening from here. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I am Amos Mani-Boema. I'm currently working with the National Public Health Agency as the manager for policy planning and research. My question is towards the use or towards developing AI governance policy. We do much of research work. We generate much of our data through research. And we have research governance and ethics policy. Do we need to go ahead to have an AI governance policy, or we can embed that into that document since we don't want to bloat the policy document as well?
Professor Keku?
Okay, sure. Yes, I think it's always helpful, like the Prof mentioned, it's always better to have a policy than have no policy. It's because if you don't have a policy, then on what basis do you evaluate whether things are off track or on track? So that's always helpful. But also policy making should be based on empirical data. And I think that's a huge gap that I've observed. There are a lot of fear-based policies around AI, or just knee-jerk reactions based, like in a space of academia, for example, I don't seem to see a lot of studies. And that's an excellent area for research. How do you, for example, you can take a cohort of students and track them over years to see how exposure or use of AI influences academic performance. You can randomize students to performing specific tasks and say, you, this group, analyze your data with AI. You, this group, analyze your data with a particular tool, and objectively compare performance, right? Or compare performance against a benchmark. You have a professor of statistics who has analyzed data and said, these are the accurate answers, right? There are tons of studies that we could conduct around AI. And so I wonder why we don't do this, right? And so the reaction then becomes, who can make a better argument? Or who has a sharp voice? Or who has more power to make sweeping authorities? And so the problem is that over time, you've seen the trend in academia seems to be people have gotten very comfortable with issuing bans and declarations and edicts, which is very, I think, a form of just academic arrogance, where you just walk by and say, I have chosen to ban all of these things. Like, it doesn't serve the community well, and it doesn't acknowledge that that academic purity, that curiosity that academia is supposed to have.
So I agree with Prof, and I think you should have a policy that specifically focuses on AI, so that it doesn't get lost in the middle of many other policies. So, and it also, you know, some of these things, it's like people forget that it's there. There's a paragraph on AI. But if you have an AI policy and there's a day you are adopting it and there's people are made aware of it, you know, it draws people attention that this exists, and And so there's a guide, and it helps also because you are going to use it also to hold people accountable. But it's also a tool that people can use to guide their use of AI, or to even protect themselves if they are treated unfairly when they use AI responsibly.
Thank you so much, Tuba. So, Prof, again, we tend to take questions until there are no questions. Sometimes the session can go on and on. And I'm not sure if it's still okay to stay on. We still have questions, even on YouTube. See some questions posted. And to everyone who's here, I mean, if you'd like to leave, you're welcome to do so as we've completed the attendance register. We're just taking the last few questions. Any limitations from your side, Prof. Again? Any?
We can go for another 5-7 minutes. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let me start one on YouTube because I haven't read any from there. So, Dr. Gaku, this one is for you. Can Chisquares platform be used in high-impact journal publications, clinical or sensitive data research, and advanced statistical modeling?
Well, there are a few high impact factor journals that the New England Journal of Medicine, which we just published in with the platform. And so, yeah, you can use the platform for that. But I think the bigger question is it's research and publication in a journal is less about the tools. And I really, really don't like focusing on tools. A tool is just a way to help you achieve something. If you can achieve it by just waving your hand, then you should achieve it that way. And so use whatever tool that is the least requires the least effort to get an action done. And if it's having to do with Excel, great, do it with Excel. If Excel cannot do it, then so I think the discussion should be less about tools, because I think that takes us away from the actual question, which is how do we separate truth from chance and bias? That's just my viewpoint on that. It's moving away from tools, really.
Thank you, Prof.
100%, 100%.
So after writing the Chi-Squares collaborator to write my literature review, when checked with AI detector, won't it display percent AI? Dr. Gaku, please answer that again.
Like I said, the idea of percentage AI is a nonsensical concept, because it has no inherent interpretation. So the platform doesn't say this is percentage AI use. The platform would rather say that these are the areas. Whenever you use AI, the platform will automatically craft a language for AI usage and include it in your manuscript and say, this manuscript used AI in so and so areas. However, AI was not used in these sensitive areas like analysis and this. Now, if you want to remove it, obviously you can, but at a point now, that's the burden is on you. So I think transparency means let's be willing. If we all hide away from disclosing AI, then the culture never shifts, and we're stuck in this round cycle, debating on and on. So I think declare when you use AI. Of course, on the platform, you don't even have an opportunity to use AI for data analysis or things that are sensitive, because the platform does not even allow you to do that.
Prof, I'm fascinated by the questions, Lungi. Many of the questions are focused on: will I be caught? Exactly. Will they detect? Will they? So it's like there's some discomfort for me about that, because it seems as if you feel like, okay, I'm using something illegal. So please tell me, will they find out? Exactly. Will they find out? And what we're saying is that actually use it ethically. Then you don't have to worry about whether they'll find out or not.
Exactly.
Do you see what I mean? Because it's nonsensical. Like just do good scholarship. Like just use it ethically. Then you don't have to bother about whether they'll find out. If they ever out of the blue say you did this, then you know how to hold them accountable, because you've indicated this is how you use it, you know how. But if you're worried about will I be caught, it means you know that you're out of the way. Or you're suspecting that maybe I'm doing something that shouldn't be done. So rather play ethically. Then you don't have to worry about will they find me out or not.
Very well said.
Mm. That awesome. All right. So, Prof. Agaku, I want to believe the writing on the discussion is entirely human. Was that why it was left out in the demo? Please clarify.
Oh, I left out of a demo because I wanted to allow time for questions. But for any section on the platform, like the introduction, the discussion, there are three ways you can write it. One is you can just type yourself, bring out your keyboard and type every line yourself, right? The second one is the AI first approach, where you simply click and the platform will take the context it has and then generate the document for you. It's supposed to be a first draft, and so it's your job to edit that draft. The third option is then to provide your inputs first, and then the platform will develop a coherent content from that. Again, remember, the platform is not meant just for academia. People who in the industry use it, and so the standards should always be what does my institution allow, or what does my own personal ethics allow. So you can just use whatever option is made available for you. So as a platform, our job is not to prescribe what people should do. Our job is to provide the tools and educate people adequately so that they can make well-informed decisions.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. And I have to apologize. Oyejide Esther Puruzi, I think you should join the next session. We already are going past the 7 extra minutes that we were granted. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, Prof. Pageng. I must say, I really love those glasses. Those are the coolest glasses I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
Thank you.
Stylish and a great presentation. We couldn't ask for more. Thanks a lot, Prof. Agaku. We need more of those demos. We need people to also see what more can the platform do. You showed a snippet. It was really very, very brief. So we hope in the next few weeks we will be able to show them more, demonstrate more. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you've all completed the attendance register. We don't want people saying they didn't receive certificates. We will send certificates to everyone who has completed the attendance register. Otherwise, any last words from you, Prof. Pageng and Agaku?
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the engagement. I mean, we can make these presentations as much as we like, but what makes them rich is the engagement of the people on the platform. So thank you to everyone who asked the question. I've been reading the comments, and it's good to have you. So thank you to also Lungile. Thank you, Prof. Agaku, for the presentation, the demo afterwards. This is very useful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are those your last words?
Those are my last
words. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.